Ja, bocs, nem vettem észre, hogy forgunk. Szóval, sziasztok! A mai adásban arról lesz szó, hogyan küzdenek meg a tizenévesek a közösségi média függőséggel, és mit tehetnek a szülők. Elegem van, nem hiszem el, senkinek nincs semmi más dolga, mint hogy nekem írogasson.
Going on the internet to Google something is a life skill. And if we take the phones away from the children, we inherently say, oh, that life skill isn't good enough or it's not needed, but it is really needed in our DNA. And
a grown-up man rang and he was asking for some tools how to not use Tinder anymore. He refused to go to therapy because he says that's not really a big issue, but he's not able to delete it and he's fighting using Tinder for a month already.
And he calls you.
Yeah. Sounds like most of the people I know who have some kind of a problem. Yeah, give me an advice, but I don't need, like, help.
You can't give a little child a mobile phone. There's no need to use it to have it. So I think it's like teaching a child to walking next to the child growing up with a mobile, with the social media. You have to, of course, be with them, teach them what you know, and if you want to teach somebody, you have to know what you're talking about.
I spoke to a student who said that in their school they talked about the conscious use of social media and things like that, but there were another student who said that in their school, absolutely not. They just said that AI is bad and don't write your essays with ChatGPT or things like that. The whole society, I mean, parents should be, educated in some form, or they should educate themselves in order to can help their kids.
Banning is not really a smart choice. It doesn't teach you the value of the technology, I think. And it sounds like an easy solution, just don't use your phone in the classroom. But this frontal education, we know, is really outdated. So something better or more meaningful could be incorporating the usage of technology.
Phones and other forms of media are neither good nor bad. It so much depends on how you use it. Self-regulation is a big point, but you cannot expect that from a child. They haven't developed their impulse control.
So you will now sign the statement that a parent is not evil if they set boundaries, right? They're not a bad parent then?
It is so important to set these boundaries and to be a good role model.
Sziasztok! A Középidő egy osztrák-magyar produkció, és reményeim szerint az új kedvenc beszélgetős műsorotok, ahol európai ügyekről van szó, meg arról, hogy mire kellene jobban ügyelnie Európának. Én Paprika Kinga vagyok, a vendégeim pedig mindenféle művészek, kutatók, újságírók és szakemberek Európa minden sarkából. 2 hetente jelentkezünk új adással, úgyhogy iratkozzatok fel most a jobb alsó sorokban lévő gombra kattintva, válasszátok ki a kis csengőikont, és emellé még állítsatok be 3 hét további emlékeztetőt, meg kössetek csomót a zsebkendőtökre, hogy véletlenül sem maradjatok le egyetlen adásról sem. Az adásokat nézhetitek felirattal is, az alul elérhető 15 nyelv bármelyikén. A tanév kezdetén némi felhördülést váltott ki a rendelet, amely szerint az iskoláknak el kéne kobozniuk a mobiltelefonokat a diákoktól a nap kezdetén, és a tanítás végéig azt vissza se adni, ha csak a tanár másképp nem határoz. Önmagában nem is lett volna akkora baj a mobilhasználat korlátozásával, ha nem kormányrendeletben teszik, meg nem az évkezdés előtt pár nappal dobják be, méghozzá anélkül, hogy kitervelték volna, mégis hogyan valósítható meg ez a rendelkezés, hiszen időnként több 100 000 forintos eszközökről van szó, ki vállaljon értük felelősséget. Meg aztán hogyan tanítsunk médiaismeretet, forráskritikát, digitális tájékozódást az eszközök nélkül. Gondolom okostáblán, jó poroszosan, hogy a tanár a táblánál kajabál, megmutogat, a gyerekek pedig összecsapott bokával figyelnek, ugye nem? Na, persze mindezt még ki lehetett volna valahogy ókumlálni, pedagógusok és intézményvezetők is láttak a dolognak, hanem ekkor jött a mestercsel. Azonnali hatállyal kirúgták a budapesti Madách Imre Gimnázium igazgatóját, miután egy Facebook posztban elmagyarázta, hogy a törvény 5. cikkeinek értelmében ők nem fogják elvenni a digitális eszközöket. Úgy tűnik, a belügyminisztérium nem olvasta a saját törvényüket. Persze, amikor a rendőrminisztériumhoz tartozik az oktatás, kicsodálkozhat a büntetőpolitikán. Nyilván lehetne rosszabb is, Kínában törvényileg központilag maximálták napi 3 órában a gyerekeknek járó videójáték időt, Majd a közösségi média platformokat is időkorláttal sújtották, és kötelezték őket erősen megszűrt gyermekverziók kialakítására. Mindenki eldöntheti, hogy neki ez tetszik-e vagy nem. Mindenesetre a kínai szülők megspórolhatják a veszekedés egy részét, mert amikor a gyerek veri magát, hogy miért nem lehet többet, akkor csak azt mondják, Xi Jinping miatt. De nem csak a kínai kommunista párt gyanakszik. Az Európai Bizottság is elkezdett kutakodni a függőséget kialakító algoritmusok ügyében. 2024 tavaszán formális vizsgálatot indítottak a Facebook és az Instagram ügyében, mert szerintük ezek nem védik kellően a gyermekkorú felhasználókat. Én kamasz gyerekeket nevelek, nyilván az én környezetemben is heves viták zajlanak, pro és kontra. A spektrum egyik szélén az ezoterikus képernyőtagadó szülők vannak, vagy bahianadrágban, vagy tarsolylemezzel, vagy ezek valamely keverékével, akik szerint még kikapcsolt tévékészüléket se szabad lásson a gyerek 16 éves koráig. A spektrum másik szélén terülnek el azok, akik már a másfél éveseket is egyedül ültetnék le a YouTube elé, a kamaszoknak meg aztán végképp semmilyen korlátozást nem akarnak szabni a digitális fundamentalisták. Én a saját tapasztalataim szerint az átlagnál szigorúbb szülők közé tartozom, és ebből nagyon sok feszültség adódik, amikor a családommal egyeztetek, de azért így is bőven kapok a fejemre, mert megint mások szerint meg romlásba döntöm a leszármazottamat a túlzott engedékenységemmel. Az elmúlt években sorra jelennek meg riportok és tanulmányok arról, hogy közösségi médiafelületek komolyan károsíthatják a gyerekek énképét, lelki egészségét, és valójában a felhasználók függőségéhez vezethetnek. Mit tehet egy felelős felnőtt a gyerekek védelmében, és hát legyünk őszinték, a saját digitális függősége enyhítésére? Ma 4 beszélgető partnerem osztja meg a tapasztalatait. Tóth Karolina Fancy, kognitív pszichológus, az Egyesült Államokban tanult, és 10 évet töltött az IT-szektorban. 2023 óta dolgozik újra Magyarországon, és a Kék Pont Alapítvány Józan November kampányáért és a Digitális Detox programért felel. Fatima Ursula Kowanda-Yassin pszichoszociális tanácsadó. A bécsi Sigmund Freud magánegyetemen a környezeti kérdések, az iszlám és a muszlimok kapcsolatát is kutatta. Munkája során tinédzserekkel foglalkozik, vizualizációs technikákat és szabadtéri foglalkozásokat is használ. Tarnay Kristóf Ábel újságíró, aki több magyar lapnak is ír oktatáspolitikáról. Szegeden nőtt fel, a tanulmányai alatt a Független Diákparlament tagja volt, és részt vett a 2018-as diáktüntetések szervezésében is. Julia Dier Bécsben működő pszichoanalitikus terapeuta és az Ergon Verein egyik alapítója, amely a médiafüggők kezelésére szakosodott. Köszönjük az Alt Mede Kunstvereinnak és a Sebestyén György osztrák könyvtárnak, hogy vendégül láttak minket, róluk még lesz szó bővebben egy kicsit később. Vágjunk bele!
Hello and welcome. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us. We talk about social media and how it affects young people, not just young people, but mainly young people this time. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like to start with you, Fatima, because you work with young people directly a lot, and you also deal with their relationship with social media. What do you see out there in the field? Is it as detrimental as we like to be panicking about? Is it worse than we think?
So I think there are advantages, but also disadvantages. And when teenagers and children, of course, are supported by adults, by grown-ups, parents, teachers, they can learn to cope with it. If they know how to cope with it, if they know how to use social media in a way they can have an advantage from it, then they will have it easier also in their lives as grown-ups. We all have to kind of reflect all the time about the whole use of social media. I think when they learn how to use it and how to have limits and how, for example, I mean, in social media you can hear different opinions from all kinds of people. You can learn how to discuss issues. You can learn how to find your opinion. You can be in touch with people from all over the world. But on the other hand, of course, we know what pictures do to our minds, that it's very exhausting and overwhelming. So I think when they learn how to deal with it, it is an advantage. But it needs more regulation from the educational system. It needs more support from parents, teachers, and I think it also needs awareness. This generation which grows up with social media, they get so much more information.
Yeah, maybe just impulse, right? They get more impulses.
Yeah. But on the other hand, they have a very high awareness on issues where nobody has talked about them a couple of years ago.
Julia, you work specifically in the field of addiction, including defining and sort of circumscribing social media addiction. So tell us about this addiction from really like the professional side, because we use addiction often in everyday speak, and I think this means something different in casual language than it means for you professionally.
If you compare the forms of addiction, you could compare it, I think, at the best to alcohol, because alcohol is very socially accepted.
Okay.
And that's the thing we have to deal with social media addiction. We can't really avoid it. You see alcohol on each menu. You see phones on each table. So from a very early age on, you get a phone. It's mandatory sometimes in school, if you're older, to have a phone, to do this and that, to get an account for different things. Many parents don't regulate the screen time, which is the first step to avoid conflicts later on. The earlier you start, the better it gets for you as a parent later on.
This is one of those topics between parents, like vaccines have become recently. We better not bring it up because somebody is going to try to tear somebody else's head off.
What we have found at the Blue Point Foundation or Kékpont Alapítvány is that we have given children the opportunity to use these technologies before we learned to regulate ourselves.
Oh yeah.
It's nice to say, like, set rules and boundaries for your children, but most parents don't know how to properly use these technologies. We created campaigns for moderation, and our flagship campaign is Sober November, and we say, let's try for a month not to do something. And the same thing we did with Reality 2.0, we call it, our digital detox campaign. We don't want people to give up the technology. There is a very good side, as you mentioned, but it's very important to distinguish between the useful usage of the technologies and the aimless scrolling. It is really like a game addiction, like slot machines. At a slot machine, the highest point of dopamine is before you see what you get. Some social media platforms, the videos already start, you don't even have to choose, and it's the same kind of physiology within the system of a human. The point of realizing, why did I pick my phone up? Is it something that I want to do, or is it just pure habit?
I don't want to hear my own thoughts. That's why I listen to some podcasts in the shower, which makes no sense whatsoever. But then I start to think about my own life and responsibilities and say, oh, who wants that? In the shower? Let's come to you, Kristóf, because as a journalist, obviously, you utilize social media also before that, even before you started working professionally as a journalist. But you have also been witnessing a new attempt at regulating phone use, especially in schools in Hungary. Can you tell us about this new law and why this made a bunch of people upset?
Yeah, there's a new rule in Hungarian schools that in theory you can't even bring your phone. I mean, you can bring it to the school, but you have to put it away. In theory, the good thing in Hungarian legislation is that, okay, it bans the phone from school, exclamation point, yes, but it allows the teacher to say that, okay, in this class, we will use it. So it sounds good, but the problem is, it's kind of bureaucratic, like everything in our country. Like you have to administrate days before that you will use phone like Kahoot or something else on your lesson. In my opinion, the ban is just partially justified, but the bigger problem is I don't think that it will on their own solve these problems like addiction, problems with socializing. If the student isn't motivated enough, it's not enough, because they just, sitting quiet, but they have to be motivated. They have to understand why learning this material is important. Without it, you can ban it, but I think it's not gonna solve the problem.
Ha szeretsz öltözködni, de nem szeretsz szemetet termelni, vagy akár szemetet vásárolni, akkor csekkold a Swappies boltjait, engem is ők költöztettek ma, ide beviheted a használt, jó állapotú tiszta ruháidat, és elhozhatsz újabbakat. Swappies.hu, köszönjük szépen nekik a ruhát!
Technically, it would be very difficult to extract puberty from high schools, which is like self-explanatory, the greatest distraction there. So obviously there's a couple of factors that you can't really deal with. The qualitative difference between digital tools, and I think phones are primarily the surface, but others as well, is that most of these applications are specifically designed by professionals to create addictions, right? As opposed to a crossword puzzle, which I've been addicted to, but that's my problem. That's not the technology.
Yes. If you talk about an actual pathological addiction, I don't think that just take the phone away from you for several hours will solve addiction. I'm not sure that just forcing you, to isolate you from the subject of your attention alone can solve it.
Going on the internet to Google something is a life skill. And if we take the phones away from the children, we inherently say, oh, that life skill isn't good enough or it's not needed, but it is really needed in our day and age. And banning is not really a smart choice. It doesn't teach you the value of the technology, I think. And it sounds like an easy solution, just don't use your phone in the classroom. But this frontal education, we know, is really outdated. So I think something better or more meaningful could be incorporating the usage of technology.
So, as you say, taking it away or banning it, or kind of saying the mobile phone and the whole social media thing is just something we need to get rid of. On the one hand, I guess it's good to kind of find free time of using a mobile phone. So just to make it like a topic to discuss about, to give the possibility, the opportunity to think about it, to hear the opinions of the pupils, because I think children they have their opinions and they have their competences and they have knowledge, and they're not just kind of little humans who have to be adjusted. So maybe the children themselves know somehow they want to change something, but as soon as there is a pressure from outside, no, this is not for you, we'll take it away from you, then it will get a pressure against it. So when you make pressure, it will create pressure. Where you say that's mobile for a free time, I don't know, for example, 4 days a week we don't have mobile phones in the school, and then you have mobile phone Friday. I don't know, that's just a thought I have. So on Fridays you bring your mobile phones, the teachers can make a Kahoot or whatever. So kind of not being afraid of this whole thing, because it makes the whole social media issue bigger than it is.
For us at the foundation, we have a 7-day program for Reality 2.0, and we have set up the rules so much that, of course, if you think about it, you can't go 7 days without your phone or looking at the screen. We actually defined it as screens, so also no television, and using the phone for survival things like banking and responding to emails, but time boxing the emails. And for some people it's also Duolingo and keeping your strike, but really people report that they have a new way of looking at reality because they aren't supposed to take their phones, and it gives you a new perspective. For example, you can't buy maps anymore at gas stations, and if you are not using your phone to get around, how are you gonna get around? You have to look where you're going before you leave home. You have to interact with people on the street, and it's really going back some way, but also using technologies in another way.
Especially as a pedestrian, using these digital maps is the worst thing you can do
especially in a foreign place, because it doesn't help you orient yourself.
But what
But if
other
you are
thing you
walk-
can use? But what you can use instead? I mean,
thing is-
I wouldn't be able to navigate here to this place without Google Maps. I would be absolutely incapable.
Well, what I'm saying is that sometimes these digital tools offer you something that's not significantly better than the alternative. I'm always thinking about why we try and regulate and intervene on the side of the user, and why there is very little intervention on the side of the producers. So why cannot legislation interfere, for instance, with these algorithms? They are tuned to make you addicted. Where do you think we should intervene?
The opinions are very diverse. I work for Safer Internet. It's an initiative which tries to give information to students, parents, and other people regarding media use, technology, and all that kind of stuff regarding modern media. So I go to primary schools and I ask them, what do you do on your phones or on your computer? You have little 8, 9, 10-year-olds telling you they play Call of Duty every evening for 2, 3, 4 hours. This is a good example of why it is so important to set some rules for the child. There are games for children where we know or we knew that they have elements of gambling in it. It's not a secret, and this just can't be. We have to prohibit that. We do have a lot of technologies already that can provide us help, but we have to use them. And just recently, last week, a grown-up man rang and he was asking for some tools how to not use Tinder anymore, technical solutions. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't give you the technical solution. He refused to go to Turkey because he says that's not really a big issue, but he's not able to delete it, and he's fighting using Tinder for a month already.
And he calls you.
Yeah, but he
Well,
does
that's
not have a
something.
problem.
I mean, he at least I think that's a big
That's what
step.
he said.
It's the first step on the way.
Also, sounds like most of the people I know who have some kind of a problem. It's like, yeah, give me an advice, but I don't need like help. I'm not a hopeless case.
I realized what I was going to agree with you on is that it needs to be self-regulated. I think we are talking around this idea of being conscious about ourselves and our decisions, and of course rules will give us some guardrails, but we know the human condition, and as you said, pushing for something creates pushback. And really looking inward and deciding, oh, I don't even feel really good about this. Why am I doing this? Will give us some new insight, hopefully. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting is that with a lot of other things in Europe, it's also on the end customer. And for example, car factories produce a lot of garbage, and I don't think they are regulated as harshly as the end customers are. And I think
Definitely not shamed that much as the end customer.
Right.
It's
And-
all based in shame.
And there is a lot of lobbying around this, and of course those gaming companies will have a lot more financial power to lobby against their regulation. So like with a lot of things, I think there is power in the community, and talking about these issues, I think definitely makes a difference.
Basically, plastics are a good example, because in America it started with there were an ad with a crying Indian when they trying to where this was the start of blaming the user instead of the polluter company. When Meta or TikTok talks about conscious use, I think it's very hypocritical from them. Of course, they should be regulated. It is hard, I guess, because. Yes, you mentioned food. Like food is less regulated, for example, in the US than in the EU, and the problem is that that these multinational companies are really hard to regulate between borders, because they don't really care about borders. And even if EU trying to make some stricter rules like GDPR and so on, then basically blackmailing us, like EU has stricter rules. We don't really get or just limited version of Apple's AI tools or something like that. One thing is very important. I spoke to a student who said that in their school they talked about the conscious use of social media and things like that, but there were another student who said that in their school, absolutely not. They just said that AI is bad and don't write your essays with ChatGPT or things like that.
It's like abstinence, it ever works.
But the other part of this solution is that the whole society, I mean, parents should be, educated in some form, or they should educate themselves in order to can help their kids.
A mai beszélgetésünket Bécsben az Alte Schmiede Kunstverein, vagyis az Öreg Kovácsok Művészeti Egyesület látja vendégül. Ezt az irodalmi szalont Bécs belvárosában egy nehéz kovács műhelyből alakították ki, azaz a berendezés, amit a beszélgető partnerek mögött láttok, nem dísz, hanem az itt korábban használt eszközök vannak ott valójában. Az Alte Schmiede programján koncertek, előadóestek, irodalmi beszélgetések szerepelnek német és angol nyelven, a programok látogatása pedig teljesen ingyenes. Nézzetek el ide, ha Bécsben jártok. Budapesten pedig a Sebestyén György osztrák könyvtár látott minket vendégül. Nagyon köszönjük nekik. Most térjünk vissza a beszélgetéshez.
I think it's a very important point that you bring in, which we talk very little about, is that the major victims in terms of age group of pseudoscience and conspiracy theories and disinformation are the elderly,
yes.
And we talk very little about this.
I wanted to come back to the issue of social media and dopamine and what it does to your mind and to your feelings. Helping teenagers, whatever person or adults, it doesn't matter who feels addicted or who uses the phone too much, make an awareness that it is a kind of a dopamine that you have when you post a picture, you post something on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and you get likes. Yes, and every like makes you feel, yeah, that's great. You feel happy, you feel great, you feel important. Where can you get this feeling from outside of the internet? And what does it do to myself? And to reflect, now I've posted a video and I'm so happy that somebody liked it. Why is this important to me? Why does it make me feel happy? On the one hand, it's something biological. It's just something which happens to my body. And so I think that's something very important that's also has to be thought about, because when children, young people don't know what they like, what makes them feel alive, how it feels like when you meet a person in reality, and to be in contact, to be in touch, to make friends. The more they lose it, the more kind of a problem it gets to mental health, I think.
And I think this is a big factor with any kind of addiction, that it's usually some kind of a substitution, or substitution because you have either something lacking or you try to cover something up. And this takes me to the issue that we basically, at least, I'm thinking of a generation between, let's say now 10 to 20, with the kids that I raise and help raise, we forced them in front of screens during the pandemic, for some good reasons and for worse. And now we talk about them being on the screen too much. But some of them learned letters at the age of 6 on screens. So how do you then extract them from this world? Or how do we treat this, which is undoubtedly a trauma, like a generational trauma?
What I see more and more since the pandemic is that they also have big difficulties communicating. A lot of them avoid conflicts because it's so easy to avoid a conflict online. You just block the person, or you're not friends with them anymore, or you say, I'm not talking about that topic, and then just talk about the things you like or that person likes, but it's not that easy in real life. So I do a little role play with the kids every now and then, and when they say, well, I had an argument with this and that child from my class, and we try to get a solution, and they find it so hard, they don't even know what to say. So I switch positions, I am them, they are the other person, and show them, how could you do that? You need a person who you can touch, who can hug you, and that's not possible with online friends, even though I think it's good to have them, and I encourage my grown-up patients to meet them in person. They do that every now and then, and they make very good experiences.
It has visible political effects, that people don't really have a culture of gaming out a conflict, gaming out an argument, and understanding that even though our positions change on digital maps, we still can talk to each other, we still can be interested in each other's points.
It's great that we're talking about this, and we've come a long way for alcohol. You mentioned, there is regulations and food regulations, and digital technologies and really screen time is, like 15 years old. So let's be hopeful about it and say we're talking about it and we're trying to figure it out and we're trying to be understanding of ourselves and of our children. And also, these things are designed by professionals for us to get hooked. For example, if you got 50 likes on every single Instagram post, you wouldn't check how many likes you got, and it would be boring, kind of. It's like a slot machine.
It's very important, the family background, like if they can get their positive feedback, they have a healthy self-esteem, if they are not just, your test wasn't perfect, how you dare? I mean, in this case, maybe they wouldn't that very badly need the justification, the positive feedback from and so on. So in this case, I think it's basically about mental health, and I guess there should be a billion things to fix mental health, but I think it's mainly or basically mostly a mental health issue.
Most of us who have gone through the reality 2.0, we have turned off notifications completely. And it gives you a sense that you are in control, as you said. So I will go on any social media whenever I feel like going on social media, and I don't get any notifications to distract me from reality.
I also think that the family background and the teachers and the community you belong in plays a huge role. I think the reason we have to talk about legislation is because we cannot think that whoever doesn't have that supportive background can be left to the wolves.
The most important message is that phones and other forms of media are neither good nor bad. It so much depends on how you use it. And self-regulation is a big point, but you cannot expect that from a child because they haven't developed their impulse control further enough if they're young. So that's not really a good idea. You have
That's one of the most important things that takes so many years to teach them, actually.
Yeah, that's why you have to give them some form of structure.
So you will now sign the statement that a parent is not evil if they set boundaries, right? They're not a bad parent then?
It is so important to set these boundaries and to be a good role model. If you're not a good role model, then you're probably not showing the child any alternatives.
It's you can't give a little child a mobile phone. There's no need to use it to have it. So I think it's like teaching a child to walking next to the child growing up with the mobile, with the social media. The older they get, the more you kind of give responsibility to them to cope with it. But you have to, of course, be with them, teach them what you know, and if you want to teach somebody, you have to know what you're talking about, what you said. If I'm as a grown-up, as a parent, I have no idea about social media, how can I help my child? How can I make boundaries? How can I, if I don't know what I'm talking about, if I don't know what about the issue? The last thing I wanted to say is, I would like something like this kind of a discussion with youngsters. So teenagers, pupils, could talk about the whole issue and say what they think about it and what they experience, so they get lifted up as experts, because they are the experts in this. Of course, not only every expert needs somebody to exchange with and to learn, but that would be a wish of mine.
Yeah, but those little bastards chose school instead.
Yeah.
That's why they're not here. Thank you so much for spending this time with me so that I didn't have to listen to my own thoughts.
Thank you.
Te állítanál be képernyőidő-korlátozást a gyerekednek? Vagy magadnak? Írd meg nekünk kommentben, és ha már úgyis ott lent turkálsz, akkor légy szíves, lájkolj egy nagyot, iratkozz fel, és küldd el a műsort a képernyőfüggő nagymamádnak, meg a képernyő elutasító waldorfos rokonságnak is. Ez a műsor az Eurozin produkciója. Ha még nem hallottál az Eurozinről, akkor spuri, azonnal nézd meg a weboldalunkat, mert ez a remek online magazin hiányterméket árul, méghozzá ingyen. Minőségi, lassú újságírást mindarról, amiről érdemes az embernek gondolkodnia. Európa szerte 100-nál is több partnerlapot szemlézünk és fordítunk angolra, illetve saját tartalmainkkal mutatjuk az utat a digitális zajban. A médiapartnereink a bécsi Októ TV, Magyarországon pedig az Átlátszó. Ez a talkshow az Európai Unió Kreatív Európa programja és az Európai Kulturális Alapítvány társfinanszírozásával készül. Fontos, hogy az itt kifejtett nézetek és vélemények csak a felszólalók és a szerzőké, nem feltétlenül tükrözik az Európai Unió vagy az Európai Oktatási és Kulturális Végrehajtó Ügynökség véleményét. Sem az Európai Unió, sem az EACA nem tehető felelőssé értük. Nem mintha bánnánk, ha valaki megfogadná a tanácsainkat. Nagyon köszönjük az Altes Mede Kunstvereinnek és a Sebestyén György osztálykönyvtárnak, hogy vendégül láttak minket.